Canada is not a serious country. We have tampon machines in male washrooms. And today, Canada's Chief Justice says the existence of Canada's borders is discrimination. Discrimination. Who needs a border anyway? Donald Trump did say somebody took a map and drew an imaginary line across it and called it a border. Mexico and the United States are working on bilateral free trade agreement, and Canada has been cut out. I'm Mark Nixon. Welcome back to the show, where I use my decade-plus experience in finance and provide you data-driven content to wake up the masses before it's too late. But after this report, we have become a banana republic in this country. Let's get into this report. Canadian taxpayers now have to pay for refugee and illegal migrants' daycare. Yes, that's right. I said that correctly. The Supreme Court just made a ruling that it was unconstitutional to block refugee and asylum seekers from getting free government-paid subsidized daycare program. I don't know about you, but I have never received free daycare from anybody. They offered just a few daycares. They're all filled up. Everybody else had to pay the $2,200 a month for 2 children. That's right. That's what I paid for years. Let's get into this report. Here's a press conference from today where Mark Miller says that he is absolutely thrilled with the Supreme Court's decision, which found it unconstitutional that we're not providing all this free daycare for everybody. Oh, and look, it's our favorite guy, Gilbo, standing in the background.
Just wondering if the federal government can comment on the Supreme Court's decision today regarding daycares in Quebec and asylum seekers.
Yep, certainly. I think this was the right decision. Support the Supreme Court and respect its decision-making process. I think regardless of the legal arguments that the government of Canada may or may have not supported made by Quebec, the initial decision morally was the wrong one. I think it targeted kids, a group of kids that need to be supported. So it was, the decision itself was unfair and cruel. The best way to integrate into society is on the benches, on school benches. So if you fail to do that, you're missing a key part of what we're all aiming for successful integration, and targeting asylum seekers and refugees just wasn't right, particularly when you're asking them to work here and they're actually paying taxes. So,
school benches? A daycare is not a school bench. It's daycare, and it costs a significant amount of money. And like I said, there's still a lot of Canadians that don't have this free daycare that he's talking about. This story gets even more wild. Things have gotten out of control in Canada. The Supreme Court says low-cost public daycare must be given to asylum seekers too. And Richard Wagner wants to go even further. Chief Justice says the existence of Canada's border is discrimination. Discrimination. A border is now discrimination. That's why I said we have gone full woke. We are going full broke. You know what's hilarious? Is if we don't have a border anymore because it's discrimination, isn't that just giving the keys to Donald Trump? Come on, Donald Trump. Remember when you said the line, it doesn't even exist? It's imaginary. Now the liberals are basically saying, you're right, Donald Trump. That line is discrimination. Let's just remove it. How ironic is this? Now we're heading off to Japan. The real Mr. Bench on X provided this video. Look who it is. It's our boy Matt Jenerus sitting right next to Mark Carney in Japan. You can't make any of this stuff up, Canada. Here's a quick recap of Mark Carney's trip in Japan, but what I'm looking for and the reason I'm showing you this clip is at the very end. Pay attention.
Sure, Mark Carney is in Tokyo today on the final leg of his Asia-Pacific tour. The visit comes as Canada looks to strengthen trade and security ties with key partners in the region. The CBC's Catherine Cullen is part of the team of journalists traveling with him and brings us more from Tokyo.
Prime Minister Mark Carney is trying to bring Canada closer to Japan. This is the final stop on a three-country tour of the Indo-Pacific. Carney met with the new Japanese Prime Minister, Takaichi Sanai, where Carney tried to show off a bit of Japanese from his time living here in the 90s.
I'm not finished yet. Sorry, Daichin, to aite orishiku omoimasu. Nika kanke ga masumasu choko naru kyoto o nagatte imasu. That's
Carney is the first world leader to visit her since her landslide election victory. Behind closed doors, the two leaders talked about trade as well as the Iran conflict. Then the two announced a series of agreements, what the Canadian government is calling a comprehensive strategic partnership, meant to bring about more cooperation on areas that include critical minerals, defense, and technology. Specifically, there's a commitment to do more joint military exercises. Japan may join Canada's annual exercise in the Arctic. Canada will also launch a Team Canada trade mission to Japan, and the two countries will work together on AI. Carney wrapped up this international trip with a series of meetings with Japanese business leaders. Car manufacturers are expected to be a big part of those conversations. 70% of the cars made in Canada are made by Japanese companies, and Donald Trump's trade practices are creating anxiety.
70% of Canada's cars are made by Japanese. Remember that one. Everything Mark Carney does is performative. Japan signed close to $1 trillion with the United States in trade. They're very happy with the United States right now, but let's just listen to Mark Carney.
Prime Minister, as you know, there's a Japanese proverb that articulates the opportunity ahead of us in these difficult times globally. Ame fute ji katamaru. After the rain. Thank you. After the rain, the ground grows firmer. Adversity tests our strength and builds it. So today, we are taking our first steps on firmer ground.
Everything Mark Carney says is performative. Remember his Davos speech saying middle powers are going to come together and go against the United States, and then he flip-flops and says, yes, we're going to join the U.S. and Iran. Number one, Donald Trump is number one. And then all of the liberal supporters are like, what is going on with Mark Carney? Yeah, it's all a performance for Mark Carney. We're going to take a look at what he did in Japan. There's a massive difference between these two leaders. Mark Carney is number one woke. He's also Mr. Net Zero. He believes in mass immigration. Perfect. He's a liberal man. She is based. She's doing mass deportations in her country, protects Japan's heritage and history, and she is a hard conservative and believes in family values. We would be so lucky if we had her as our prime minister. You gotta absolutely love the internet because they seem to have cut off right after this handshake.
I'm not going to take any of your green bullshit.
Ain't that the truth? Thanks to the National Roast, here's an actual photo of Mark Carney and PM Takeichi. And here they are, walking together. Oh, don't they look so sweet? I just love that Mark Carney is on a skateboard. There's a reason that Mark Carney went to Japan. The day before he got and arrived at Japan, Japan is looking for Brookfield to build water reactors totaling $100 billion. There's nothing to see here, Canada. Absolutely nothing. Now you know why he has a massive smile on his face. Remember, I told you to remember. The 70% of the cars created and made in Canada are from the Japanese. Well, Japan just made it clear in this interview that to continue to support Canada's auto sector, it's contingent on a successful renegotiation of USMCA. Because the US economy is 11 times larger and they want access to that market. Without the United States, they're out of Canada. This is huge.
The auto sector. I mentioned that last time you were here, we were talking about the opening of an EV operation. I was looking at a statistic that was pretty startling that showed, a study this year showed that Toyota and Honda produced 77% of the cars and light trucks built in Canada last year, which reflects a pretty steep decline for the U.S. car makers. Where do you see the future of Japanese production in Canada?
I think including the automakers, the Japanese companies see the Canadian market with strong interest. There are 5 reasons. One, enormous resources, critical minerals and others, oil and gas. And second, quality of labor. Thanks to their very effective migration policies, those companies can hire all the people need high-end to their workers. And 3, society is very stable. They are very welcoming. And 4th, the federal government and provincial governments are very generous to welcome, to invite investments. And 5th, you are the part of the biggest market of the world, North America. Canada is part of this market based upon the free trade agreement. With those 5 conditions, the Japanese maker chose to come to the Canadian market. And the automobile industry is very important. And compared with other companies from other countries, Japanese companies have a strong commitment. They think trust is very important. So once they hire the people, they usually do not lay off. So they maintain the employment, good times, bad times. So that is the sort of the reasons why they have 77%. Great example of the collaboration between 2 countries.
How important is the existence of the access to the U.S. market and that free trade agreement that you mentioned?
Yes.
How important is it to maintain or increase Japanese investment?
I think that is the critical condition, because Canada is, of course, a G7 country. Your GDP is one of the top 10 countries, $2.5 trillion. But you know the size of the U.S. market, 30 trillion. And I think, and so all those cars made in Canada, of course, sold in Canada, but at the same time exported to the U.S. market. I think those companies, private companies, I mean, they have to calculate to increase profit. So Kuzma is very important part of the calculation.
If we don't get a new deal with the US, Japan is out of Canada. 77, it's not 70, it's 77% of all the vehicles that are created in Canada is with the help of the Japanese, and they are going to be leaving full tilt. So why is Mark Carney traveling around the world? And in only 4 months, the USMCA is gone. It's toast. Without access to the US market, the whole world is going to reject Canada. We are finished. We got some breaking news. Liberal insiders getting rich. Didn't we hear that before with Justin Trudeau? Well, more and more evidence that Carney isn't special after all. He's just the same old typical liberal. He got caught using Canada's infrastructure bank to enrich liberal insiders, including a former liberal MP, with your tax dollars. Meet your new liberal boss, the same old as the old liberal boss. This is like the green slush fund all over again. $200 million of below market rate loans, along with $150 million in other subsidies to a wind farm in Nova Scotia, tightly connected to former Liberal MPs. And it's not just any former Liberal MP. Edgar Sampson, which was previously involved in the Liberal Arctic surf clam quota scandal, which is the one that was tied to, remember, Dominic LeBlanc violated federal ethics laws because he made a decision that furthered the private interests of Miss Thorold, his wife's first cousin and general manager for the premium seafood. These liberals give their friends and families deals in order to get rich. Like, how are we going to stop this? And why do Canadians take a look at this and they continue to vote for the party that is over and over again breaking our ethics laws? I always scratch my head and say, you know what, Liberal, if they wake up in the morning and they see that families of 3 former Liberals MPs get $231 million in federal support, putting money into their pockets, wouldn't they be like, hey, that's not really fair. I don't want to vote for this. I want some accountability and change. That's what I really don't understand. Hopefully you're not trying to fill up your vehicle in the lower mainland BC. These are prices seen in Vancouver right now. $1.839 is the very cheapest you could get. They're all over $2. And oh, look at the price of diesel. You might see $2 down the road across Canada, but Vancouver pays the highest amount of taxes for gasoline out of any other place across the country. I believe across Canada, it's about $1.50 right now, but it's heading up. Check out the price of oil is up to $90 US per barrel for the first time in 2 years. Because of the Iran situation. Check out the rocket ship. It was down to $57 to start the year. We are now blown past $90. Expect higher gasoline prices. If this thing goes up to $1.50, we're in big trouble for gasoline prices. Maybe, just maybe, this would be a great time to remove all carbon taxes on everybody forever. Just saying. We now have some of the most advanced satellites in human history right now, and they're starting to map out greenhouse gases. The GOSAT-2 was able to conduct this map, and it found that the boreal forest, which is the second largest forest on planet Earth, is actually absorbing 385 million tons more than we are emitting. Can somebody please send this to a Liberal? US now imports more from Mexico than they do China. Canada approached Mexico last year and asked Mexico to cut out the US from the USMCA. On August 7th, who remembers this? And Mexico said, you know what? There's no need for a bilateral trade deal with Canada. Nope, we're fine with the deal we have with the US. Well, we got some breaking news today. Mexico and the United States are going to start talking about trade on March 16th to reviewing free trade agreements. Guess who's not there? Canada. Canada is not even talking to the United States, and now we're not even talking to Mexico. We have been cut out of the deal. Now that we found out that Mexico's joined bilateral trade with the United States and cutting Canada completely out of the deal, no more USMCA, Canada's freaking out. And guess what? Dominic LeBlanc is heading down to Washington, D.C. right away to fight against this move. This is how bad things are getting for Canada. So imagine we don't get the renewal of this free trade agreement. Like I said, all of the auto manufacturing's gone. Everything's gone. Maybe this is the moment that Canada needs to reject the Liberals completely. Maybe we just need to fail as a country so that we could all just wake up and get rid of the Liberals. That's it for today's report. Leave a comment. I read all the comments and I appreciate every single one of you. I did a special interview with Dallas Brody from 1BC. I cannot wait to release this report. It is one that you will not want to miss. I'll see you on the next report.